Hello, hello,
Hey
hello.
everybody, how you
And
doing?
it's going to be an exciting one today. We're
Really
so
good.
excited about
Excited.
this. And so we see folks starting to come on. Oh, there's Denise Dean.
Yes,
Good to
hi.
see you. And this is going to be an exciting Carter Anointed Hands. I don't know who that is exactly. Hello to everybody. And look who we have here.
Well, well, well.
Yahweh.
We have Rob Goldstone himself. Rob, they have called you a Russian spy
They
child.
have.
They have called you they have called you everything but a child of God, really. I mean, we have known you for quite a while, but lately you have been the man who has written the most infamous email in history. And golly, there's just so much going on. And we wanted to let people know you how we know you as a really wonderful man who did press and PR with our company, Gospel Centric. Believe
That's
it or not.
true. That is true. That's
That's
how we
true.
met.
Man, I told Vicky, I said, man, now that I know everything about Rob here, how did he have time for us?
I know. I
Exactly.
just, when I saw all the great things that you had done,
You were
but I must
doing.
tell you this: when the RussiaGate scandal came out, and I'm going to be honest and transparent, I went into shock. I saw your face with the Trumps, and they were saying you're a spy and RussiaGate and all this, and I actually went into a bit of a panic because you're a friend, and I didn't want to not be a friend to a friend. But I thought, golly, if I call him to see how he's doing, are the Russians gonna go after me? I mean, you
No, no, no.
hit all
And
these crazy.
that's really valid because a lot of people, well, first of all, I appreciate the pair of you and I love you both and I've known you for years
Love you too.
and it's interesting because so many people didn't know what to do. They were scared and I understand it. They thought, well, if they're investigating Rob Goldstone and I'm a friend of his, are they investigating me? People ask me all the
Right.
time. They say like, were you upset because we didn't reach out? That's okay. What upset me, and actually what angered me, was a couple of people who I'd known a really long time sent me the most vile emails. That's my favorite word. It's English, vile.
Oh,
And I was like, first of all, you don't even know the facts. And secondly, why would you ever treat anyone like this, let alone someone you're supposed to be a friend with?
Friend
So
too. Yeah.
right.
yeah, as friend too. So I understood it though when some people were a bit nervous about reaching out because, first of all, the person that was the most shocked about this whole story was me. You're speaking to the person that was the most shocked.
Yeah, I
So,
knew.
well,
I can
Yeah,
see that.
when I first was, I heard about this. I was overseas, and my cell phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was this very nice lady from the Washington Post, and she said to me, "Did you I think she said something like, did you once send an email to Donald Trump? Something like that. And I said, yes, why? And she said, yes. And I said, yes. She goes, have you read the New York Times? I said, no, no, I haven't done anything. I'm in Greece. What are you talking about? And she goes, I would suggest you read the newspaper. And it was shocking to me. The whole thing was shocking. And after that, it became a lesson in understanding context, understanding what it was about, and the media who have since told me this years later, this is now 3 4 years ago, they said, well, we knew the story was nonsense about you, but it was a really good story because you wore crazy hats. So
Right.
the
Right.
hats. Follow the hats.
follow the hats. But I actually, although I laugh about it, it really annoys me as well because I was a journalist and it's not funny when you're at the center of these
Yeah.
things. It really is not funny. And the most shocking part of it all is I've never supported Donald Trump anyway. So I was, I famously testified because it's public knowledge. I said to these congressmen that didn't understand it, I said, I didn't support Donald Trump. I didn't promote Hillary Clinton. I promoted my client. That's the bit you don't understand. It was about working for your client, who was a musician trying to catch a break. And They just couldn't understand it. I'd done an event for Barack Obama. I'd done something for the Clintons. We'd suggested some music. And I remember this Republican congressman in the meeting saying to me, I don't understand. Now you're a fan of Hillary Clinton. I said, I'm not a fan of anyone. You don't understand it because it's all about the music and my client. And that's why you don't understand it.
Well, let's go all the way back then.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Let's start from the beginning for some of our folks that may not be familiar with you as we are, as a friend and a person that worked with us with Gospel Central, with some of our biggest gospel clients and some of our biggest gospel artists. You were born and raised in the UK.
True.
And I heard this thing on some podcast where you went to a school for elite and delicate Jewish boys or something like that.
Right. You almost got it right. I wish they had been elite. No, I went to a school called Delamere Forest School for Delicate Jewish Children. And
what does that mean?
I have no idea, but I think that it literally amounts to child abuse to go to such a school with such a name. It was actually, they did very good work. It was mainly for children that had asthmatic issues. I did not. And it was what they call a fresh air school in England. So it was based around health and getting you well and all of this stuff. But it had the most ridiculous name. And
that's a deep name. I'm like, what is delicate?
Exactly. It's very, I have to tell you that we have a mutual, a dear friend called RJ Helton, who was, on American Idol.
RJ for us.
I worked RJ for you. And I told him this story and he was laughing hysterically. And he said, I'm going to write a song. And he has a song called Delicate Child. And it's based on that story. That's the story it's based on.
Hilton, of course, was American Idol finalist that was signed with us, and he did write that song. I remember it was a beautiful song about.
It was a beautiful song, and it was about his life as well. But he wanted a title for this song, and he goes, "I've got it! It's Delicate Child because you went to some crazy delicate school or whatever." So yes, that's where I was born. That's where I went to school.
The connections there.
Is your family still with you? Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, that kind of stuff?
Extended family is. I have, my mom was one of 10 and my dad was one of 8. So I have a lot of cousins, and most of my aunts and uncles have passed, but I have a lot of cousins. But my family, as it does exist, is still in England, although I'm in the States.
Okay. What are they thinking about all this? I mean, because I know you go back and forth from England, U.S.
So, as crazy as the press was here, it was equally crazy in England because they like the idea of British-born publicist is, Russian spy, Putin's puppet. By the way, for every story that said I was a Russian spy, another set of media said I was Hillary Clinton's plant to unseat the Trump campaign. So it depends what you watched at the time. I could be either. No, my family, I felt bad for them for 2 reasons. I have a godson who's now 21, so he was probably, 17 at the time. The media went to his school to interview him and try and, it's disgusting. You can say what you want about me.
Talking about that with Gospel Centric, I said, Lord have mercy, are they going to show up at my church or something? But I wasn't willing not to be your friend.
Well, no, and I appreciate that because it happened to a number of my friends. And some of them, I have fun, crazy friends. One of them was at a concert in Italy in a place called Lucca, a classical concert. Her phone rang, and all she remembers hearing was someone saying, "Tell us something Russian," and Rob Goldstone. And she went, "Vodka, that's a Russian word." And they wrote a story that I was some weird alcoholic obsessed with vodka. So that. And so, but I have to say, you asked me about my family, how they reacted. I went to see an aunt of mine who was about 90 at the time, and she was in an old people's home. And I thought, I have to go and say, I'm sorry, all this drama's going on. And she said to me, "Why are you apologizing? I've become a bit of a star here. Everyone knows you're my nephew, so they all make a fuss of me." So that was hilarious. But
oh my gosh,
there was realistically, there was very little that was amusing or at the time
Yeah.
it was, because for
Yeah.
anyone that's ever been at the center of anything where you're told, the FBI is investigating, the government's
Yeah.
investigating, Bob, it's like, excuse me, I sent an email for a client, let's not get carried away. And to be honest, only when I met with these people, like the FBI, and especially the Mueller team, they made it very clear. They said, you're not a subject in any of these. Think of yourself as like a witness to a road traffic accident. You have no skin in the game, but we know that you were there, so we need to know what you know. And once it was explained like that, you become a bit calmer, but not a lot.
Well, tell me how did you meet Don Jr. and the Trumps?
So it's a very valid question, because if you read the media, I not only met him, I'm one of his closest friends, I'm one of his father's closest, whatever. I've met Don Jr. twice. I've met Don Sr. maybe 5 times. Now, I've met both of you far more times, just to put it in perspective. So I had a client who was a Russian pop star, but had grown up in New Jersey, and his name was Emin, and he wanted to be successful internationally. Now, normal.
Emin, Emin.
Yeah, Emin. He used to say Emin like lemon, and I used to say it's M&M and take off the last EM for savings. That's what I would say. And so he was a really successful singer in his own country, but he'd grown up in New Jersey. So normally I would say what we've all said to people: I know you want to be an international star. It's a bit difficult. I'll see you in 100 years. But he had a bit of a twist, which was his family were the Trumps of Russia. They were these billionaire builders. They owned concert venues, they owned radio stations, they owned TV, all that kind of stuff. So because of that, it doesn't make you any better as a musician. But if you're a good musician, it gives you the ability to pay for a great video, to pay for a marketing team, as you know, where other people don't have that option. So that being said, we did some incredible things. He opened for a huge British act called Take That. We opened in Europe for them. I had him on the World Music Awards. I had him on the Today Show. We were in Sochi with Al Roker, and we did all these amazing things. And he was making a video and wanted, and I quote, the most beautiful woman in the world to be in the video. Because if you're a billionaire, that's what you want. And so I said to him, this is really funny, but I'm friends with a Miss Universe. Isn't that weird? Let me ask her. I asked her to be in it, and she said, thank you, but no thank you. Okay. And she said, but I can hook you up with the Miss Universe organization. There's probably somebody there that can help. And so Emin and I go to a meeting, and it's while we were at that meeting that, he suddenly said to them, have you ever thought of having the contest in Moscow? They said, interesting, we have, it's difficult. And to cut a long story short, he said, I have a venue, I have the infrastructure, I can make it all happen. The next minute, we're doing a Miss Universe contest in Moscow, and who co-owns that? Donald Trump. So that's and that's it. That's how we get to meet Donald Trump. And I have to say, Donald Trump knew nothing about any of these meetings until it was way down the line. A lot of stuff is made of the fact that, he orchestrated this. He wanted this. Putin wanted this. None of those people wanted it. Emin wanted it because, rightly so, he knew that he wanted to be a star. It's as simple as that. He wanted to be a star. And as you both know, if you have the wherewithal, and in this world it means the dollars as well, you can be a star. You can't make people buy your records. You can't make people like you, but you can do a really good job at promoting yourself.
Yep. So let's go back just a bit, though, to see why Emin even wanted you. And that was you.
Because I'm amazing.
You are amazing. Absolutely. And I mean, some of the biggest things that we ever did at Gospel Centric, you helped happen, like getting Kirk on CNN and Tamil Man and people like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love Tamil Man. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, and I still looking at some of the people you've worked with, from Muhammad Ali to BB King, Cyndi Lauper,
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, and on and on. You were a guy that had a lot of access, and you were the guy. I mean, for us, we wanted to be with you because you had access to people that we could not get on our own. So it it really made a difference. So I can see why Emin was even going with you. Are you saying that we're blurry? Are we a little blurry to
You
folks?
guys are a little blurry, I have to say. I thought it was because I'm old, but you are a
No,
little
Okay,
blurry.
so
No, I
let
think,
me.
give us a quick second. We're gonna
yeah, we're
just
going to work on this
Cool.
blurriness.
double.
I don't know what happened, but well, I'll keep talking in the
Yeah, sure.
meantime. So are people saying yes, we're blurry? I'm
Yeah,
I'm looking here to
yeah.
see if we're
I
blurry.
look.
Are we there? Hey,
Rob,
He dropped off.
that's okay. Just
do we need to drive somewhere else?
Okay. Is that better?
I don't know how to see.
Okay, so it looks like we're connecting it.
Oh,
Rob,
great.
I'm so sorry. We haven't. Of course, this would happen with your
That's
interview,
fine.
but we're going to have to do this again sometimes and say we're getting a poor connection. But I mean, you've worked with everybody. The Friars Club, you had Betty White, and
Little Tom
gosh, you had
Cruise.
Tom Cruise, and so it makes sense then to me that he would want to be connected with you because you were going to make him a star. And his dad, Ari, is that Aris, who
Aris,
was the
yeah.
billionaire dad? So you were kind of in this world of the billionaire dads. It looks like to me. You have the Donald Trump on one side with his son, and you have the billionaire Russian with his son, and they both want things. Their sons are kind of the ones moving this train along, and they're the ones that kind of want something.
I agree 100%. In fact, CNN has a guy who you probably know, Jeffrey Toobin, who's their big legal guy. And
Yes.
I recently did a podcast interview with him, and he said to me, you know, I have to thank you because I had lunch with him, I don't know, a few years ago. And he said, why do you think this all happened the way it did? And I said, I think both sons did it for their fathers. They did it for
Yes.
daddy because they
Yeah.
both have rich and powerful fathers that allow them to live and carry on the way they want to be. And I think in the case of Emin, I know both him and his father. You know, he had a father that told him when he was 18 he'd never amount to anything, he'd never do anything, he'd be some tearaway horror. And when Emin did his first concert, MTV Russia famously interviewed his father afterwards, and his father said, I'm not a fan. Well, that's a lot to live up to. Do you know what I mean? Now he is a fan. I must put
Father
that in
said he
perspective.
wasn't a fan of his
Yeah,
son's music.
yeah. Now, even if you're not, it's not a stretch to tell a little white lie, perhaps a little fib. But anyway, that's what he said. I have to give him his due since then. He is a fan, and I've seen him at many of his shows, but that's what he said. Don Jr., Don Jr., when I decided who to send this email to, I chose Don Jr. because I'd met him twice, and he seemed like the kind of there's a great Jewish word, like a nebbish son that no one cares about, who
I
it
don't
was,
know what nebbish.
it means like no
Like
one
a
cares
gal
about it
versus
at all.
girl.
Mm.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like, I thought, well, if I send it to him, no one will care. Probably no one will even read it because he won't care and no one cares about him. So it was kind of like the lowest rung on the totem pole was to send this thing to Don Jr. I'd met him twice, and he was, I have to say this, both Don Jr. and Donald Trump, on the few occasions I've met him, were both fun, nice, interesting. You know, Donald Trump, I went with Emmett to his office once, and he was listening to rap music. And I walked in, and here's Trump listening to Mac Miller's song, Donald Trump. And he held up
Oh,
a,
Mac Miller.
yeah, and he held up a platinum disc, and I said to him, "Have you ever listened to the words to this song?" And he goes, "I don't care about the words. It's got 90 million views, and it's about me." That was Donald Trump, and he was so excited to have this rapper talk about him. He was like a big blustering self promoter, and he once said to me, as you can see, I have ridiculous hair. He once said to me, "Is there something weird with your hair?" And I said, "You and I are not having a hair debate because you'll lose." So at the time, before he became president, I found him fun and funny and interesting. And I've spoken to so many people that say they've known him for years, and that's who he was. This kind of almost buffoon, but quite endearing in a way.
Wow. So I'm sorry, we're trying to fix the lights
No,
here.
I know you have some technical, you know, because you guys are music guys, I have to tell you a story that I wrote about in my book just because I found it. This summed up Donald Trump to me. Emin was performing at an event, and Trump, it was at his golf course. And as we were leaving, somebody introduced Timberland to Trump.
Okay.
And he has this whole animated conversation, and then he calls Emin and I over, and he's like, "Oh, do you know Timberland?" And he's like making out it's his best friend. Timberland walks away, and Trump says to me, "Who was that?" And I said, "Timberland." And he goes, "Those are amazing boots." And I said, "Not that Timberland." And he just had an entire conversation with a man he believed had created shoes.
I can't.
I can't. So he thought Timberland was a man who created.
Yeah,
boots.
because he'd seen the name Timberland on shoes. And Emma and I just laughed hysterically. I mean, it was very Donald Trump. He'd been so gracious, this guy, and interested in everything he did. And I'm thinking, well, he's talking to you about being a Grammy-winning, award-winning producer, and you think he makes shoes. Shoes. So, you know, but that summed him up to me. So the Trump we see today is nothing like the Trump that I knew on the 5 occasions I met him. You know, but people change.
But you think they changed that much? I don't hear that much
Well,
change.
you know, if I could be a little controversial here and say, I think Donald Trump never believed in his wildest dreams that he would become the president of anything except the Trump organization.
No, I mean, absolutely. That has been said many times before that, you know, he really surprised himself as well. We're actually driving now trying to keep...
Oh, I love this. This is truly a car. This is like carpool karaoke. We should start singing in a moment.
Exactly. And today we're just, I don't know, we're all over the place. We're going to try to park again. But let's talk about the actual meeting and this Crown prosecutor.
Right.
Natalia. I'm just going to say her first name, Natalia. That's all I can say.
Veselnitskaya. Nobody needs to know that name.
Yeah, Skaya is the last part of the name. But all of a sudden, tell us how you get into setting up this meeting between Trump and the Russians. I was like, Trump and the Russians? What is he? He's a music and
exactly.
How is he in this?
Trump and the Russians is, by the way, Trump and the Russians is a great, or what would have been a great name for a band many years ago. Now it's not such a great name. So the same client that we're talking about, Emin, he called me. I don't even know what year it is, 2016, I suppose it was, in June, and asked me if I could do him a favor, and that his father had met with some really important prosecutor, and who wanted a meeting with the Trumps. That's all they said, the Trumps. And could I make it happen? And the more I asked him for information, the more he said, well, why do you care? You don't have to go. You don't have to do anything. You just have to get the meeting. And it didn't make any sense to me because Emin or his dad had never talked politics with me ever. We talked music. He's a music guy. So, and I'm a music person. I don't know anything about politics, and I'm not born or I know even less. So I tried to talk him out of it. And a lot is made of that. And people think I talked him out of it or tried to because it was wrong, but it wasn't. And I think you and Claude will get this. The reason I tried to talk him out, me asking this request, was because I thought if Donald Trump somehow became the president of the United States, and if we know him, which we do a little, and I'd also got him in Emin's music video, I may add, I know where Emin's next single is being filmed, and that's in the Rose Garden. So I need that favor up my sleeve. I don't want to ask
what you wanted to.
Sure,
The Rose
I know what
Garden where everybody just cut.
Yeah, where everyone got coronavirus. No, I just, foolishly thought if he becomes president, I need to have a favor up my sleeve that I could maybe ask. Why is Emin asking me for this favor to call in with the Trumps? And asked them for a meeting for a lawyer he's allegedly never heard of, he knows nothing about. And when I asked him what the info was, he said they have some potentially damaging information on Russians donating to the Democratic campaign. Now, I have to say right here, the biggest regret I have is there was only one campaign at the time, and that was Hillary's campaign for president. So I turned his words, which were donating to the Democratic campaign, into Hillary, and I made it about Hillary. And it really had nothing to do with Hillary, because if you had been the candidate, it would have been about Vicky. And if I'd been the candidate, it would have been about Rob. But that was the candidate. So a sort of more publicist or PR way of saying it was Hillary Clinton's campaign. But it really had nothing, as I've said from day one of this, had nothing to do with Hillary as such. It had to do with the Democratic National Committee's campaign. And so I eventually gave in, said to Emin, it's a really bad idea. But he said, just do it, type of thing. I did it. And at the end of the day, you know what? I'd done other crazy things. I was the same person that he said, please get Donald Trump in my music video. Well, that's also a crazy thing. I got Donald Trump.
Donald Trump in his
Not only wanted it, I got it the next day. Donald Trump, this is back in 2013. He's in Emin's music video. We filmed it in Moscow during Miss Universe. And I remember Trump saying to me, I'll do it if you can do it in 15 minutes or less. And Emin, being Emin, said, we'll do it in 13 minutes. And so he's in Emin's video called In Another Life. Donald Trump is in it, front and center of it. So it's, a lot of people say, well, how could you have not known? Such a big ask. All these things are big. When I got third day on 60 Minutes, that was a big ask as well of 60.
Right, but that's what you're in the business of.
Right, exactly. And, when I asked Michael Jackson and his manager, Frank DiLeo, if I could go on tour as part of their entourage, that was a big ask as well. And I got that. When I asked Muhammad Ali to come to a radio station where I'd worked, and he got in my car, the radio car from the newsroom, that was a ridiculous ask as well. As I say in my book, you have a chance of that one, of being punched in the head by the world champion. But you get nothing. If you don't ask, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
So that's always been my philosophy. You ask, the worst people can say is no.
Is no. So you're in this situation where Emin and who's asking the favor? Emin wants.
Emin's asking it for his. Yeah, no, he doesn't want to meet anyone. He's asking a favor on behalf of his dad, who's asking a favor on behalf of a lawyer. You mentioned before something about a game of telephone, about something else. And if I had to sum up what this was all about, It was a very bad game of telephone. It's lawyer asks father, father passes on to son, son passes it on to me, I pass it on to Don Jr. That's a lot of passing for stuff to go wrong. And, you know, it didn't go wrong as such, but there was a lot of misinterpretation and a lot of interpretation by me, who's a publicist, that if you tell me that this is a well-connected prosecutor, well, I assume she's not connected to, you know, the power grid. She's probably connected to the government. So, but it's my interpretation of it. It's not necessarily what was spelled out. Having said that, it's what turned out to be true. But those were my suppositions at the time. Everything that
because you weren't getting information. They were just
right.
like, make this happen.
Make it happen.
This
yeah.
is what I want.
Yeah. And it'd be no different than if you said to me, hey, I need Mandisa on the Grammys. Do whatever you need to do to get her on.
Right.
Well, you know what? As a publicist, you do whatever you need to do. And so many publicists that I know have said, actually, so many people on TV have said, have you ever seen how we book guests to be on our TV shows? It bears no relation to how we speak to them, what we ask them about, but we promise the earth and we deliver a little fraction of that.
So, I mean, were you actually, the meeting is happening. You made it happen. The truth of the matter is you made it happen. And were you at the meeting?
I was. It was have you ever seen that movie with George Clooney called The Perfect Storm? So I wasn't ever supposed to be, but I was. And I was there because I'd agreed to sign everybody into Trump Tower and to kind of deliver them up to the one person who Don Jr. would know, which is me. So once I had handed them off, he looked at me as if I was crazy that I was leaving Don Jr. and said, well, just stay. And I took that to mean, who are these people? I don't know them. I sort of know you, so please stay. And I think it's the polite thing to do at the time.
Right, you put it together. So.
I didn't care. I didn't have to be in it. I was checking my emails. Who cares? I'm in it. I have to say, with hindsight, I'm really glad that I was in it, because if I hadn't been in there and witnessed what actually happened, I might have also believed a lot of the stuff that really just wasn't true, and also stuff that was true, but people didn't understand the context of what was said.
Wow, so you're there, you're in the meeting, and you're with this Crown prosecutor, and so what is being said in that meeting? I've always wanted to be a fly on the wall. I mean, can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing is, you mentioned a couple of times the Crown prosecutor, and that's my fault, because so in England, if you're a federal prosecutor, you prosecute for the Crown being the Queen of England. And in the case of that, she's the figurehead of the country. So I call what you in the States call a federal prosecutor, I call them a Crown prosecutor. But what the media went off and had like a collective nervous breakdown was that they decided that the Crown prosecutor I was talking about was some amazing person who is kind of like the prosecutor general of the whole of Russia, who I've never heard of. And it's when I tried to explain that it was just my word, the Crown prosecutor, they understood it. But that's another of those occasions where they said it was too good a story to explain it away. If you're English, everyone in England knew what I was talking about. It's a federal prosecutor sitting there. Any old federal prosecutor. But in England, we call them Crown prosecutors. Well, it's much better to go, he obviously meant the #1 prosecutor in all of Russia. And I said, you haven't had a crown in Russia since 1917, when they executed the royal family. Are you crazy? But no one cared. So, you know, a lot of this, as I've said all along, is about context and about a willingness to understand why things are described the way they are. And that was the reason for that. Was it a bad choice of words? Yes, but only because it's the US. To anybody in England, they knew exactly what I meant immediately. And so would they hear if they listened to what I said. It's just they chose not to.
So you've got the one side expecting to get dirt on Hillary, basically, and another side that is trying to get what?
So I obviously can't speak to what they were trying to get, but what became apparent at the meeting, and it's been well documented, is that what they had offered as a carrot dangler, as I call it, it was a mixture of a bait and switch and a carrot, which is we've got this incriminating evidence of these Russians donating money. Turned out to be people who were involved with something called the Magnitsky Act, which I had never, ever heard of. But now I'm an expert on it. And it's to do with sanctions that were put in place. And the net result of it, you may have all read about where Don Jr. said the meeting turned out to be about adoption. And people said, right, how ridiculous. Well, the very core of the Magnitsky Act, the sanctions that America were given by Russia was, you cannot adopt children any longer from Russia. Now, I'm going to make another very controversial statement. If you are a couple in wherever, and you want to adopt a blonde-haired, blue-eyed child, the place that for the last however many decades they have gone is Russia. So why this became a thorn in their
blue-eyed child?
Right. That's where they go. They go to Russia. That's where the adoptions are. So once that was a sanction, people have been trying to get that lifted. And in Russia, the Magnitsky sanctions were huge. And so this attorney, this Crown prosecutor, she wanted to give this damaging information on Hillary's campaign. But it was nonsense. It was that the people who were involved in the Magnitsky Act were donating to the campaign, which, in my opinion, and everyone else's opinion, they are entitled to do. It just pissed her off. Well, I remember sitting there thinking, looking at Don Jr. and thinking, didn't your father used to donate to the Clinton campaigns also when he was a Democrat? Have I missed something here? So I couldn't understand why it was of interest. But the reason is because it turned out to be not of interest to anyone. And that meeting wrapped up in, I think it was 10 or 12 minutes, with Don Jr. saying, what you're saying may be very valid, but my father's a private citizen. You should address it to the Obama administration. They're in power, and see if they can do anything about it. I then, because I had no idea, you know, if you can imagine being in my position where you'd set up this meeting, which you didn't want to do to begin with, you're told it's about something to do with this Hillary campaign. And then it's about adoption, where the people you've set it up with are like, why are you here? So I jumped up and literally herded them out like cattle and was like, thank you, goodbye, let's go. And on the way out, said to Don Jr., I'm really embarrassed. In fact, I've never been as embarrassed. And he said to me, it's fine. I just have no idea what that was about. And we left.
It sounds like you got played. It sounds to me like you got played. You understand that?
I do understand that. Yeah. This is what I think it is. And because I wasn't ever supposed to be in that meeting, but I think it was a bit of a bait and switch, but it all makes sense when you really, really understand it, which is the very same lawyer that said she had the dirt. She did have dirt in her mind, but it was nonsense. It was, these people are donating to Hillary's campaign. Isn't it outrageous? Well, the answer is it might be outrageous to you, but there's nothing wrong with it. They can do what they want. They are the same people, and with all these people. So
now I can't hear you.
We have information
Does he know that?
about this campaign. Somebody's probably going to listen, even though we now know, and I know for sure.
Can you say a little bit of that again? I have never had so many problems. All you praying folks, pray for us, because this has been going crazy. So what was the last part of what you said?
And I'll get some of those people from the Delicate Jewish School to pray for us as well. We'll have everyone
Yes,
praying, everyone.
from the delicate Jewish to everybody that knows how to pray.
Pray.
We're gonna have to talk again after the election too.
Exactly. No, what I was saying was that all sides of it are sort of right with context. So the lawyer represented the Magnitsky Act. I didn't know that. She believed that the people who were making the donations, in her words, illegally, or that shouldn't have done it to Hillary's campaign, that they were doing something to do. That also wasn't true. They can do whatever they want. She might not like it. They can do what they want. And the final part of it is the adoption is hugely an important part of it. But Don Jr. was right. That's nothing to do with them at the time. His father
But that was
ran a
important to
TV
Putin,
show.
right?
Hugely.
But that,
as we discovered when him and Trump stood together in Helsinki. And I nearly fell over off my sofa watching this thing on TV on CNN. And I see Putin talking about Magnitsky Act and Bill Browder, who's the name of the man the attorney said was donating kind of illegally to Hillary's campaign. It's a huge thing for Putin. It's a huge thorn in his side. So it is important. Without context, people might think, the hell is all this adoption about? It's hugely important to Putin.
Right.
wow,
But
so
it's
crazy.
complicated. But it's complicated. Now, I walked out of that meeting not knowing any of that, called my client and said, you have asked, this was in the middle of the night, his time. I said, you have asked me to do some pretty ridiculous things and awful things and embarrassing things. This is the most embarrassing thing, and I never want to talk about it again. And I hung up on him, and we never, ever spoke about it again, which is interesting. So that when this all came up, it was a bit of a shock.
But okay, so you have this meeting, a horrible meeting, and you think it's all over.
An embarrassing meeting. To me, yeah, the word that sticks in my mind was it was embarrassing all round. Why have we asked for this? Why are we here? What is it? Who is this person? Why have I helped do this favor for somebody who seems to have just done nothing other than annoy the people who are in the meeting? It was just a big embarrassing annoyance, but nothing more.
And then the next thing you hear is that you're involved in something. Was this through the Mueller?
Collusion.
You were involved in, collusion and an investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're being interviewed by who? Congress or?
Yeah, I was interviewed by. So I always offered up to be. I mean, you've known me a long time, as you would know. I had no issue. I wasn't in the country for some of the time, but I came back when I was asked to. And I did an interview with 3 House committees, a Senate committee, and the Mueller people, and also the grand jury. So 5 in all.
Wow.
Oh my gosh! So
just a quick. So out of all of this, just looking at it from the outside, you read that email, it seems like there's a whole lot going on.
Sure.
Just reading it. But until you dig in and you find out, wow, there's nothing here.
So this is how I sum it up, which is there may have been a whole lot going on in terms of any other country's interference or whatever was going on. That's okay. I don't mean okay. That could be factual. What I always said is my email and my meeting had nothing to do with it. And that's what was important. And, when Bob Mueller's report came out, I was on some TV show at the time, and I said, you know what? It basically just said what I've said all along, which is if my meeting forms the cornerstone of a Russian collusion, then there is no collusion. But it's a jigsaw puzzle. So it's only a tiny piece of a massive puzzle. There may have been a million other instances of interference, collusion, whatever. But I always knew that if a lot of it was being hinged on that email and that meeting, well, then it would amount to nothing, because that was a puffed up email by a publicist and a meeting that was a load of nonsense. I also said, and I tried to be as nice as I could, but let me just say it this way. I've said from the beginning, I was too naive or dumb to know that my email probably was going to offer something which it shouldn't. But Don Jr. was just as dumb and should have known better. The person who shouldn't have been dumb was the chairman of the campaign, Paul Manafort, that was in that meeting.
Paul Manafort.
Yeah. So
he was in the meeting.
He was in the meeting. So if I'm too, like, I don't know, let's use naive, stupid, whatever, I don't care what word. And if Don Jr. is a bit too dumb, which is what the Mueller report basically said, to have known, but you've got somebody in there who is the chairman of the campaign, they should have known.
Yeah. So it's just a crazy story. And when we heard it, we thought, this is our friend. What in the world is going on here? But all of these people are involved, and then you come out as a Russian spy. And I'm wondering now, are you? I hope this isn't a too personal question, but are you? Can you vote in the U.S.? You said you answered. Can you? Are you?
I can.
Do you have dual citizenship?
Yes.
Okay, so you can vote here in the U.S.
Yes.
Okay, so
his residence is in New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before you ask it, before you ask the question, because it's an obvious question, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, and people to one of these committees, I said that if I would have voted for anyone, I would have voted for Bernie. But because not for what people think, he looks a bit like my old grandfather that used to make bagels. So that's who I would have voted for if I'd had a chance to vote for Donald Trump. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but lots of what was said sounded ridiculous at this thing. If you imagine being interviewed for 8 or 9 hours at a time, and I think it brought some context as well. Because, I shared some of the Trump stories, but I also shared stories of my client, who's a fun music guy that you two would love, and who likes music, likes to, ride fast cars and dangerous, outdoor sports and things, and had never spoke politics to me ever in his life. So it was just a ridiculous thing to be involved in. But I have to say, there's a famous entertainment attorney called Alan Grubman. I ran in one of my testimonies, and he said to me, I've known you a long time. He said, I'm just going to tell you one thing. Just don't lie to them, because that's how they get everybody. You
still there?
I'm here.
Don't worry about those things.
It has been the hardest day for us, Rob. It's a little bit on the side of embarrassing. Yes. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to talk again, too, when you come back, and we'll see if we can get things more straightened out.
Absolutely.
We've never had this happen.
Well, you see, that's
I'm glad we're friends.
That is the effect I have on people. But
no, you don't.
No,
you don't.
No. It's Instagram or something doing.
Yeah, maybe it's
because it's clear on our end. We're totally clear. It looks normal, but
yeah,
on my
and
phone,
it's good on my end. But
we
we
can
can do this whenever you like. But yeah, you've gone blurry again, you guys.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back and do this again.
One question.
Okay.
After all of this, I mean, you're completely exonerated. You're not, walk, out of this thing. Nobody's has. Okay, just want to make sure that.
Not only exonerated, but as the Mueller team said to me, like, I was never even a subject of it. I was a witness to something. But, that doesn't, I might be exonerated, but as far as, Twitter world, social media world, it is still packed with people that go, Mueller got it wrong. Congress got it wrong. Everyone got it wrong. You're a Russian spy. So the one thing I have to say is, there is one thing, though, and I did make even the most hardened congressman laugh. They said, did you try to keep the meeting secret? And I said, well, I did check in on Facebook for it. and talk about it on Facebook as it was happening. So probably I'm not that good a spy, right?
Well, you're a good person, though. We know it. We know
Oh,
you,
yeah.
and you've worked hard with us. We are going to have to. You're going to have to allow us one more chance to
Of course.
do this again. But we wanted to hear a little bit from your book because you're also a writer, and you have a podcast.
Yeah, there it is. It's called Pop Stars, Pageants, and Presidents, because it comes in reverse.
Exactly, and how an email trumped my life. Exactly.
Right.
You'd asked me if I would read a little bit, and I chose this one little bit. I don't know if anyone can hear anything, but I think they can.
We can.
Right. So this sums up how surreal and how insane my life was a year or two back. I'll read this a little bit. As I was escorted through the main lobby of the Capitol, it seemed unreal to me that I had just given testimony on Capitol Hill to members of Congress discussing the President of the United States, his relationship with Russia, his relationship with me, his relationship with my client, and my supposed role as the middleman. A lifetime of reporting and working in the world of entertainment and music promotion had left me always with the firm conviction that nothing could shock me. But I was wrong. This few days in the seat of America's government had done just that.
Wow.
No.
It was. I remember walking into the Capitol and saying to my lawyer at the time, "I've never even been in here as a tourist." And he said to me, "I have to tell you, you're about to make history because what you say will be written down and it will be in the archives, the official records, the history, the Smithsonian." It was the most insane period I could imagine anybody. It wasn't just me. There were other people going through it as well. But to me, it was almost like having an out-of-body experience, watching somebody else go through it.
And so now, what have you got going now? I mean, has this what has it done to your business? And so, what's going on?
It's hard being a publicist and being in the music business when people think you're a Russian spy. However else you want to cut that up, it doesn't work. And, I want to share a story with you. I'm not going to name the person, but I am going to share somebody I'd worked with in the music business for probably 20 years, sent me and left me the most awful messages, awful, and filled with hate and really awful. So awful that I almost gave them in to the Department of Justice because it almost was threatening in how awful it was. And today, about 3 hours before we just got to, an email came in from that person. Now, this is nearly, 3 and a bit years ago, saying, "Hi, I just read some interviews that you did, and I suppose I was wrong. But you've always had a good heart, so I'm sure you'll forgive me." And I just thought, what is shocking to me is that I don't care what anybody's done. I would never jump to that judgment. I would assume there's a reason for everything. And, like another really good friend of mine sold footage of me at a dinner with Emin and Donald Trump, but with a spin that completely was untrue. We were asking Donald Trump about a timing for Emin's video, and he leant over to me to tell me, and they sold it as they're almost colluding together about something. He was literally asking me what time he needed to be there tomorrow to do the video. That came from a really good friend of mine who I haven't spoken to. I haven't spoken to since I gave them the opportunity to tell me it was them, and they didn't 3 times in different ways. And I thought, well, then that's no friend of mine. So what I've learned is that, keep your friends close. And business-wise, yes, I couldn't do my business, but I wrote my book. and I had to
Yes.
self-publish because no publisher would touch my story, because over and over again, people at book companies in New York said, you're seen as toxic. You're seen as someone that helped get Donald Trump elected. We don't want that. That's not what we want. And I said, but you haven't even read it. And I never voted for Donald Trump. And I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. It didn't matter. So I did my own thing, and there were a number of people who very kindly stuck by me and us and my business, and we were able to do some things. But I understand that when you're in the news, it's very hard to pitch a story when they go, it's you we want to talk to. We're not interested in your client. So it sort of was impossible. And then I got the idea for the podcast. And so far, it's been doing really well. It's been #1 now in 4 countries. And I interview the interviewers. I interview a lot of people who spend their lives interviewing people. And I interview political people and music people and celebrity people and media people. And I ask like the common sort of question. I'm not political. I'm not any of those things. So I ask stupid questions, but questions that people would ask if they had the chance. What does it mean? What's an electoral college? How can you win a popular vote and not become the president? That kind of thing, because people want to know those kind of things. And that's it. And I don't know what happens next. But, you know, life changes on a dime, as we all know.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And coronavirus kicked in, and we all, you know.
Good old Rona.
Good old coronavirus, exactly. And there's an election coming up, which is always delightful. So
will you come back and talk to us again after the election, and we'll get this thing set up a little bit better. So
absolutely,
it'll be much better next time. But we're supporters of yours. We're friends, and we wanted our friends out there to get a chance to check out Rob Goldstone, kind of how we know him. And we want to thank you so much for doing this. We'll be praying for you, and we'll be praying for this election.
Exactly. And Vicky and Claude, I just want to say one thing, which is I say this to all my haters. I have a lot of haters online, whatever. And I always say to them this, and it's not my quote, I stole it from someone, but you are entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. So you don't have to me, you don't have to agree with me, but stop making up stuff that isn't true. And that's the problem. And to be honest, that's the problem I think we have today as a society. We don't have debate. We don't have healthy conversation. People scream at legs from the top. And, you know, have your opinion. Opinions are great, but don't make them up as facts. It's not
change the facts.
So that's all I would say.
That's the world we're living in.
No, that is, you're right. And I'm glad I hope it's not. But, you know, you try to live out a different way. You know, there's no, and that's why I think it was a good opportunity for people to hear, you know, your story. This is your story. I mean, you are the one there. Everybody's looking in. And as much as we've been involved in press and PR, you know, not everything you read in the newspaper is right.
No, exactly. And so not everything you read.
So you need to get the full story. And so this is an opportunity, and I think it's a deserved opportunity for you to share with us, you know, your story.
So thank you. Thank you.
All three of you, I can see you hiding back there with the
camera. Yeah, but you don't shy me. I don't think
I do.
We're on the phone right before. I just can't see you, so it's good to see you.
Well, thanks so much, and we're going to say bye. Have a great trip.
Take care. Thank you, everyone. I can see all the questions and everything. Take care.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.